For almost 60 years, the world knew Larry Hagman as two people. First, as the charming astronaut in I Dream of Jeannie, and then as the ruthless J.R. Ewing, a TV villain so iconic he became a global phenomenon. In the public eye, he was also a devoted husband, married to the same woman, Madge, for an almost unheard-of 58 years in Hollywood. Theirs seemed like a storybook romance, a rock of stability in the turbulent sea of fame. But as he neared the end of his life, at 81 years old, a stunning confession emerged. It wasn't a secret affair, but something that reframed everything the public thought they knew about him. He finally revealed the profound importance of the one woman who had been there all along, the true love of his life. This is the story of that woman, and the heartbreaking circumstances that led him to finally say her name with the weight it deserved. He was J.R. Ewing, the man you loved to hate, a character defined by bribery, blackmail, and adultery. Larry Hagman played him with such delicious villainy that the line between the actor and the oil baron often blurred in the public's mind. His life seemed to be a whirlwind of fame, fortune, and temptation. And for 58 years, his wife Madge was the quiet, elegant presence by his side. Everyone assumed it was a perfect marriage, a true anomaly in the entertainment world. But behind the scenes, their life was a storm of addiction, alleged infidelity, and devastating illness. The truth was far more complex and far more tragic than anyone knew. So when Larry Hagman, in his final years, made a declaration of love, it wasn't just a sweet sentiment. It was a confession born from a lifetime of chaos, a final acknowledgement of the one person who had weathered it all. Before the confession, there was the character. To understand the weight of Larry Hagman's final words, you have to understand the giant shadow he was speaking from, a shadow cast by a 10-gallon hut. In 1978, Larry Hagman was offered a role that would define not just his career, but an entire era of television. The show was Dallas, and the character was J.R. Ewing. At his wife Madge's suggestion, he read the script and knew it was perfect for him. He based the character on a tough oil field boss he knew in his youth, and in doing so, created magic. J.R. wasn't just a character, he was a cultural force. He was the smiling, scheming, unapologetically greedy oil baron who captivated the world. The show became a global sensation, and the question, who shot J.R., after the 1980 season finale cliffhanger, became a worldwide obsession. For months, the globe was gripped by the mystery. Bookies took bets, T-shirts were printed, and it was a headline topic on news shows everywhere. The episode that finally revealed the shooter was watched by an estimated 83 million viewers in the U.S. and an estimated 350 million worldwide, making it one of the most watched broadcasts in history. Larry Hagman was no longer just an actor. He was, as he put it, one of the most famous people in the world, loved and hated in equal measure. And he reveled in it. He described the feeling of that massive success as a coronation, as if he'd become a king. He was the Pied Piper of life, a man known for his eccentric, larger-than-life personality, who once rode a Harley-Davidson in a chicken suit just for the fun of it. But this persona brought immense pressure and temptation. The world of Dallas was one of excess, and Hagman's life began to mirror it in dangerous ways. During the show's run, he admitted to drinking up to 5 bottles of champagne a day. He'd start at 9 in the morning and keep sipping until filming wrapped. While he claimed he was never drunk, just taking small slugs, it was a staggering amount of alcohol that would have devastating long-term consequences. His daughter, Christina Hagman, would later write in her book, The Eternal Party, that she rarely saw her father when he wasn't stoned or cruising on wine. She alleged that both of her parents were alcoholics and that his infidelities were numerous. This was the turbulent reality bubbling just beneath his public image. The world saw the charismatic J.R. Ewing and the jovial Larry Hagman, but few, understood the complicated life he was leading. This contrast between his public persona and private struggles is what makes his final confession so powerful. Long before the world knew J.R. Ewing, Larry Hagman met Madge Axelson. Their story didn't begin under Hollywood spotlights, but in London in the early 1950s. Hagman, serving in the United States Air Force, was entertaining troops across Europe. Madge, a young and talented clothing designer from Sweden, was working in the city. Their meeting was the quiet start of one of the most enduring relationships in Hollywood history. They married in 1954, forging a bond that would last 58 years, until his death. Madge wasn't just a wife, she was his anchor. In an interview late in his life, Hagman was crystal clear. Meeting Madge, who is Swedish, 58 years ago was the best thing that happened to me. She was the steady hand during his nomadic early career. As they moved frequently for his work, she provided the stability his own childhood, marked by his parents' divorce, had lacked. Hagman's mother was the famous Broadway actress Mary Martin, and his relationship with her was often strained. It was Madge who often helped build bridges between them. They waited 4 years before starting a family, welcoming their daughter, Heidi Christina, in 1958, and their son, Preston, in 1962. Hagman was determined to give his children the stable home he never had, and Madge was the architect of that stability. She was a formidable presence in her own right, intelligent, elegant, and fiercely protective of her family. She was no fool. She saw how women threw themselves at her husband, especially at the height of his fame, and she made a point to travel with him everywhere. Her constant presence wasn't just supportive. She was a gatekeeper, a quiet guardian of their union. Their life together, before Dallas launched them into another stratosphere, was one of shared adventures. They embraced a green lifestyle long before it was fashionable, building a solar-powered home in Ojai, California, that they playfully named Heaven. They were a team. This image of a deep, abiding partnership became their public narrative. This long history is what makes his confession so poignant. The world saw a man married for over half a century and assumed a simple, happy story. But Madge was the central figure in a dramatic, often painful, and ultimately beautiful love story that the public was only just beginning to understand. A 58-year marriage in Hollywood isn't just an anomaly. It's practically a miracle. The union of Larry and Madge Hagman was held up as a paragon of stability. Hagman himself fed this narrative, often quipping that the secret to their long marriage was separate bathrooms. But behind that charmingly simple explanation lay a far more complicated reality. Their marriage didn't just survive Hollywood, it survived Hagman's own self-destructive tendencies. The fame from Dallas was a tidal wave, bringing a lifestyle of excess that threatened to drown him. His heavy drinking was no secret, but he also experimented with drugs, including LSD, in the 60s and 70s. He later claimed these experiences removed his fear of death, but they were part of a pattern that put immense strain on his marriage. His daughter Christina's 2016 memoir painted a raw and unsettling picture. She claimed that her father was not only rarely sober, but was also never faithful to Madge. According to Christina, his affairs were an open secret, so much so that many of his alleged mistresses showed up uninvited to his funeral. And just like that, the public image of a perfectly devoted husband was shattered. It reframes their long marriage not as a fairy tale, but as a testament to Madge's incredible resilience in the face of repeated betrayal. The struggles weren't limited to infidelity. Hagman's drinking was a disease that took root long before. The world knew him as J.R. Ewing, and the damage was catastrophic. In 1992, he was diagnosed with cirrhosis of the liver, a direct result of decades of heavy alcohol consumption. The party, it seemed, was finally over. The man who played an invincible villain was suddenly faced with his own mortality. This period marked a major turning point. Faced with a life-or-death situation, Hagman was forced to confront his demons. And it was Marge who stood by him, the constant presence as he navigated the terrifying uncertainty of his health crisis. The anomaly of their marriage wasn't that it was perfect, but that it was real. It was a union tested by fame, addiction, and betrayal. It had bent, but it hadn't broken. This foundation of shared struggle is what gives Hagman's later words such profound meaning. His eventual confession of love for Marge was an acknowledgement of the woman who had saved him from himself time and time again. The words, "in sickness and in health," are spoken at most weddings, but for Larry and Marge Hagman, this vow would be tested to its absolute limit. The trials they faced moved beyond Hollywood drama and into the stark reality of life-altering illness. Their bond, already tested by fame and addiction, was about to face its toughest trial yet. The first great test came in 1995. After his 1992 cirrhosis diagnosis, Hagman's health declined until doctors discovered a malignant tumor on his liver. He was critically ill, and his only hope was a transplant. For a man whose persona was built on jovial invincibility, this was a moment of complete vulnerability. The decades of hard drinking had finally caught up to him. Throughout this terrifying ordeal, Marge was his rock. She managed the storm, providing the quiet strength he needed. He received the transplant, a second chance at life. This brush with death forced Hagman into a sobriety he'd rarely known, and Marge was his anchor through it all. He had been given a new lease on life and a new perspective on the one he'd so nearly lost. For over a decade, it seemed they had made it through the fire. But in 2008, the couple faced a new and, in many ways, more cruel disease. Marge began showing symptoms of Alzheimer's. The diagnosis was confirmed, and the woman who had been Larry's sharp, steadfast partner for more than half a century began to slowly slip away. The man who was once the patient now became the caregiver. Hagman devoted himself to Marge's care. At first, he insisted on looking after her himself, with a source noting he was so absolutely devoted to her. He took on the heartbreaking duty of caring for the woman who had always cared for him. As her condition deteriorated, the burden became immense. By 2010, Marge required 24-hour nursing care. Hagman eventually had to make the agonizing decision to move her into a dedicated care facility near their home so he could see her every day. The pain was palpable when he spoke about it. "I miss her every day," he said. "We were a good team." He dreaded the day she would no longer recognize him, a fear made worse when a nurse told him Marge would forget his visits moments after he left. This journey through sickness defined the final years of their life together. It was a profound role reversal. The wild man had been tamed, not just by his own mortality, but by his deep, abiding love for his wife. He had seen her through his darkest days, and now he was guiding her through the fog of her own illness. It was in this context of immense, heartbreaking loss that his final, public declarations of love would be made. In the autumn of his life, a Dallas reboot came calling, and there was no way to do it without J.R. Ewing. Hagman, then nearly 80, agreed to put on the Stetson hat again. But this triumphant return was set against a backdrop of profound personal sorrow. His wife, Marge, was deep in the throes of Alzheimer's, and the daily reality of her illness was a heavy weight. Hagman admitted the new show was a lifeline for him, a distraction from the constant pain of watching the love of his life fade away. Then, in October 2011, just as production was beginning, Hagman faced another battle. He announced he had been diagnosed with stage 2 throat cancer. In a statement that was pure Hagman, he blended his JR persona with his new reality. As JR, I could get away with anything: bribery, blackmail, and adultery. But I got caught by cancer. He assured the public he would receive treatment while working on the show he loved. He was now 81, playing the character that made him a legend, all while secretly battling cancer and openly grieving the slow loss of his wife. It was during this period that the confession took shape. It wasn't a shocking reveal of a secret lover. It was something far more powerful, a clear, public, and profound articulation of what Maj meant to him, delivered with the weight of a man facing the end of his own life. Speaking about Maj's battle, with Alzheimer's and the pain of her forgetting his visits, he stated it plainly and with heartbreaking simplicity: "She is the love of my life." This wasn't a line from a script. This came straight from the soul. For decades, the public had seen them as a handsome couple on a red carpet. But now, he was finally giving the world a glimpse into the true depth of their bond. This was not the swaggering JR or the party-loving Larry of his youth. This was a man stripped of all artifice, a devoted husband watching his wife disappear while staring down his own mortality. Friends would later say that while cancer was an official cause of his death, he truly died of a broken heart from losing Maj. On November 23, 2012, Larry Hagman passed away from complications of acute myeloid leukemia, a battle that followed his throat cancer diagnosis. He died in Dallas, the city whose name was intertwined with his own, surrounded by family and his beloved co-stars. On his deathbed, he was still talking about taking care of Maj. His final confession wasn't about a hidden affair, but about a love that had been hiding in plain sight all along. A love that had endured fame, addiction, betrayal, and sickness. A love that, in the end, was the most important story of his life. Larry Hagman lived a life that was bigger than fiction. He created J.R. Ewing, one of television's most enduring villains, a character synonymous with greed and power. But the final act of his life revealed a far more compelling character. A devoted, heartbroken husband. His 58-year marriage to Maj Axelson was a story of two halves. The first was a whirlwind of rising stardom, legendary parties, and the darker undercurrents of addiction and alleged infidelity. The second act was a quiet, poignant drama of sickness and devotion. When his own body failed him, Maj was his savior. When her mind began to fade, he became her dedicated caregiver, loving her through the relentless fog of Alzheimer's. His public confession that she was the love of his life was a revelation to a world that had long equated him with his on-screen persona. It was a final, heartfelt acknowledgement of the woman who was his anchor, his partner, and his greatest love through every tumultuous chapter of his extraordinary life. Larry Hagman's most profound legacy was not the scheming oil baron he played on TV, but the real man who, faced with loss and mortality, showed the world the true meaning of a lifelong vow. If you were moved by the incredible story of Larry Hagman and his lifelong love for his wife Maj, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the hidden lives and secret loves of Hollywood's most iconic stars. Click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story.